to say goodbye.
It's hard to say I miss you.
The time of love
Is a gruesome cruise.
I need you now, dear Lord.
When you build, some destroy, and they destroy even in a short space of time, and they leave you devastated. This is the show, Painful Goodbyes, and I am Skumbuzo Dube. And in the show today, I have Rich. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, thank you. People would love to know who we are talking to. So maybe you can just briefly tell us who we are talking to.
Thank you, Pastor. My name is Richard Maplanka. I was born into a business family. My dad was an entrepreneur from the 60s, and he gave us that gene of wanting to do business, and this is who I am now.
Okay. Just intrigued by the fact that he started in the 60s, and that was a colonial time.
Yes.
I don't know what leaf you can pick from that in terms of business, because at that time it's only the white people used to, but he was thriving at that time.
Yes. What the colonial rulers at that time allowed you to run only certain businesses and in certain areas. So my dad ran a bus company called Fellowship Bus Services. And he had some shops, and later on got into farming, into filling station, and into supermarkets, of which all of these things are still running now by God's grace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what did you learn from his ingenuity and his experience that he passed on to you as a business person today?
There's a lot. A lot of it is never give up, always fight, always think outside the box, always treat people with respect, your employees, treat them like they're your family, and that way they will work with you, giving you their hearts and their honesty as well.
Sometimes business persons don't pass on this heritage to their children. But it seems he passed these genes, like you put it, I'm taking your words as they are. I think he must have had a secret, and I don't know whether you know the secret.
Well,
anything that's memorable that can, yeah.
What I know my dad did was he always gave us the worst jobs, and he made us the lowest in the company. So I used to report to his employees, and his employees would tell me what to do, and my siblings as well. So he'd give you the lowest, hardest jobs, the most undesirable jobs, and in it he would say, so that you understand, you are not any better. There's nothing that anybody can do that you can't do. There's no job that's big or small for you. If you ever want to run a business, you must be able to lower yourself, humble yourself to the lowest position. And then that way you'll have a good understanding of what you're asking people to do.
So amongst the businesses that you are doing currently, which one is top on your list?
My passion is passenger transport. Right now we're engrossed in a bakery and a supermarket, which is what my mom used to do before she retired. It's in the high-density suburbs. I think we moved in that area in the very early 80s, in 1982 to be specific. Yeah, and we've been part of the community ever since. They come to our funerals and our weddings in that community. I'm a child of the township in Lobengula. Yes.
So growing up as a boy, I would know the Maplanka.
Yes.
That was a very powerful brand. And I think there is something that is tied to that property and to that business. What could that be?
The supermarket. We've tried to always hire within the community. As a young boy, when I was given duties at the shop, in those days when you used to buy, I think 20 kgs or 50 kgs milli meal, it used to be delivered. And I would be given the assignment of putting it on a bicycle, yes, and go door to door. And then you get to know families, you get to know even when people are sick and when people are celebrating or there's a funeral. And you become one with the people. So it was interesting. When I look back at it now, I didn't understand it back then, but now I see the importance of community.
Thank you very much for sharing that bit of your story.
Thank you.
This is the show, Painful Goodbyes. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to the second segment of the show, Painful Goodbyes. I am Skombozo Dube and I'm with Richard Maplanka, a businessman. And before we took the break, we were talking about the order bike and the shop in Lopengula.
Yes.
Yeah, and I have childhood memories because I come from that place.
Wow.
And so it's really a place that I'm connected.
I might have delivered some of that milli meal there.
Exactly. And now your parents, did they pass this on to you, or what happened about that shop?
What happened is the country went through some economic difficulties. My wife is from Botswana, and we decided to relocate to Botswana at some point. And then we rented out our shop to one of the leading supermarket chains. And unfortunately, there was instability, and then some riots took place. And in those riots, our shop was gutted in fire. Everything was destroyed, literally left to ashes. And the challenge was, now this was my mom's heart and soul. She had worked in that shop for 30 plus years. And when we looked at it and we assessed the damage, it was just beyond any amount of money that we could imagine getting hold of and fixing. The government came up and said, we'll assist, but it was seemingly a drop in the ocean because you had to have so many man hours of labor and they could only supply you with so much. So we put our heads together. I said to my wife, you know what, we need to go back home and salvage what's there. Sometimes you put others ahead of you. So we left our operation in Botswana and we moved back to Bulawayo. And when we looked at it, we kept asking ourselves, how do you put this all back together again? But on a Christian note, I've learned to say, take one day at a time. Yeah.
Maybe just going back to that day, I don't know how the news arrived to you, how you got the news. Somebody delivered the news. And
what happened, it was an interesting thing. It was in the beginning of the year. I was dropping my daughter off in Pietermaritzburg. She goes to a boarding school there. And my phone I actually was taking an afternoon nap.
Okay.
And my phone kept beeping.
Okay.
I had put it on silent so I could just get some sleep. And then when I turned it on, there was a picture of fire. And I you know how social media is, whenever there's these things, they just post them. And I never thought for a minute that it was my shop. So I asked the person who sent it to me, where is this? What's going on? And he said, look a little closer. And then when I looked closer, that's when you start to identify and say, oh, this is my shop. And I sat up in my bed. I started making frantic calls to say, what's going on? the first thing that came into my mind that it must have been an electrical fire or something, a normal fire. I didn't think it was arson. I didn't think that there was any riot or anything like that. So that's how I got to find out.
I'm trying to think about, you see, boys don't cry. I know, but now here is something that your mom has been into for 30 years, 30 plus years.
Yes.
And your heart is there, and you're looking at this phone, and you look closely, you discover that this is my shop. What emotions came to you?
It felt like things were suddenly changing. You know, you are in Pietermaritzburg. You wish you could instantly be there to take control of the situation, extinguish the fire or something. I thought of my mom, and I thought what this would do to her. So I stopped thinking about the property and I started thinking of her. I called my siblings and I said, can somebody rush there so that you manage her, so that she doesn't get overwhelmed, maybe a stroke or any of those kind of things that happen to people when things of this nature happen. So in as much as I was worried about the shop, I thought more about my mom and seeing her lifetime work go up in flames like that.
So it seems now the primary problem became your mom.
Yes.
And when you reached out to her, or maybe when your siblings reached out to her, what did they say was going on?
I sent my young brother, Brendan, I said, go to the shop and see what's going on, try and understand. I sent my sister to my mom, and I said, just manage her. Don't tell her anything until we have the full story, and then we'd know how to break it down to her. But social media, before they got there, she had heard. So she was still confused and a bit concerned. So the only thing we could do at that point, being so many miles away, was to pray. And we said, Lord, just be in control of her and in control of the situation at the shop. And the fire blazed for a few days till it was completely extinguished. And the rioters and the looters kept going in there to steal as much as they could. Even permanent fixtures like piping and burglar bars, they were trying to take them off. The doors and the gates, everything, anything that they could lay their hands on. And what hurt the most is that this is the community that we served so many years, and these are the people I delivered Millie Meal to, and it was so heartbreaking to see that happen.
I was going to ask that question, that here is somebody that you are giving water to drink,
Yes.
and they are giving you poison. Maybe can we process that?
When we got back to Bulawayo to go and assess, obviously people recognized me, and people came and they said, sorry. And I said, but what happened? And we had old people, old grannies and grandpas, uncles that would come, and they said, we tried to tell these boys. And another said, it's as though a spirit came upon people and they acted out of character and they did what they did. Because the very next day, when they woke up looking for fresh bread and milk and eggs,
It was not there.
There was nothing. When they were looking for painkillers and cough mixture and all those things that were always at their doorstep, those things were gone. So I think it was heartbreaking for them as well, because they spent a few years before we could put it back together again.
Right, there are people that are within your circle of influence, like even the family members. How did they take this loss?
I think because of the difficulties in the economy. By the way, insurance turned us down. They said, due to the nature of the incident, they couldn't honor the insurance claim. So we were really left on our own, and any amount of help would have been a drop in the ocean. So that was the one day at a time prayer, that Lord, today we need to just clean, just to clean up. And when you swept up the debris and all the waste, it was a mountain. It was a mountain. Then you realize how much you've lost in just that pile of waste that was there. And we had to start it over. I mean, there was nothing we could really salvage. We really had to. The building was standing, but it was so damaged by the fire. The fire had gone into the metal structure of the building, the reinforcement part. So
it was weakened.
It was weakened, and the inspectors came in and told us you'd have to put a lot of material to re-strengthen this thing before we can approve you to occupy it again.
I'm imagining Mom walking down to see the shop. I don't know whether you were back or you were not yet back at that time.
I wasn't back. They went with my siblings, and all I could say is, we will repair this. And I think in her old age, in her wisdom, and knowing what it took to get it there in the first place, you could tell there was doubt in her voice to say, how? How do we bring this back?
And what things did she struggle with, or what things are you struggling with? Maybe you pick Mom first and then you come to you concerning that.
With Mom, the struggle was feeling that she had lost everything she had worked hard for. I think every parent works to leave something behind for your children. And for her to feel like this thing that she had worked hard for had, in her own lifetime, before her eyes, had disintegrated and vanished, before she could say, my grandkids saw the work I did. So that was the difficulty. And for us, it was just the challenge of already having so much to carry, and you have this thing that is really a blow. That was the difficulty of the moment.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. And as we said when we started, when you build, others will destroy. Please stay tuned for the third and final segment of our show, Painful Goodbyes. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the show, Painful Goodbyes. I'm with Rich. We've been discussing about the loss of the property at Lobengula, where they had a grocery shop. So earlier on, we were discussing about Mom, and she must have had a very difficult time to process this. How did you support her?
With Mom, it was always words of encouragement and prayers. When we got back, my wife and I, to rebuild, we asked her not to come to the shop. Said, Mom, just give us time. Because we didn't know the journey, and we knew it was going to be discouraging, it was going to be hard, and we didn't want her to see that part. And we just came to reassure her, to say, we are here, and we're going to make this work. So, and what we told ourselves is that we're going to make the shop better than it was, the supermarket better than it was before, so that it will be a healing for her to say, it's better than it was a blessing in disguise. Maybe you might say that, okay, it burnt, but what came was better, like the old and the new wine.
I understand.
Yes.
Yes. So you became a support system. But
Yes.
sometimes people who support others have a challenge of failing to have people who support them. And I'm wondering who was supporting you.
Well, I would say my wife definitely was that voice when you come back at the end of the day and you're discouraged. Somebody who just tells you it's going to be okay, keep pushing. There were some community members that would come and help out where they could. Some of them gave us promises to say, you know what, we'll never let this thing happen again, not on our watch. And they then also got a better appreciation of what this establishment was into their lives as well.
Talking about the community, now it was time for them to come back and say, we are thanking you. And I think there was a very beautiful connection with the community. And what about the kids?
My children?
Yes, your kids.
Well, my kids, we told them what had happened. They were kind of confused. Why would they do that? Because we used to tell them the stories of our upbringing and how our parents had brought us up, and they couldn't understand it. And when we had spoken about it, we said we'd put it in our prayer program. And they would pray for the shop to be reestablished. And for me, it gave me a fire to say, I want the kids to see in a very practical way that prayer works.
Okay.
That hard work combined with prayer is what brings about success.
You know, sometimes people will be having well-meant words and they'll be trying to encourage you, but maybe they don't get to you in the way that they thought. What were such words or comments that were said by people that were good also, that helped you, or maybe those that didn't help you?
I think the discouraging ones was when they would not take ownership, when they say a spirit came upon us, and I used to say, what if it comes upon you again? What's going to happen?
All right.
But a lot of people would be encouraged, and they would come and help, and they'd say no. At the beginning, we couldn't even afford the night watch, and they'd say no, we'll be here. The young men in the community and the neighborhood watch, they would come and look after the shop and make sure that it's safe, because they would be building materials in there. Some of the guys, Adventist workmen, would come and say, okay, on a Sunday I can come and put in a few hours as well to bring back the shop. So it was, you got the sense of that I'm not alone in this thing, and God would send his people.
You know, it's something that you build, you just get connected to so much. And there was a connection, really. I'm wondering what lessons you learned when that connection was severed by the cutting down of the building.
Pastor, I would say that the lesson that we learned is that everything on earth is temporary, and that your treasure should be laid in heaven, and that material things are just material. You should be able to any day separate with those things if the time comes where you have to, and that it's God who sustains you, not your money, not your profession, not your business, not your spouse or your children or your parents. It's God that sustains us. So for us, we used to feel a sense of security knowing you've got this property that's there. But God temporarily took it out and showed us that, you know what, even without this thing, I can sustain you, and I can also replace it.
Okay. You've brought the God concept there. Soon after it happened, what was the God concept, your God concept?
It was, first of all, God, why did you let this happen?
Okay.
That's the very first feeling that you get. Why did you let this happen? And then later on, as you see the miracle unfold of things coming back together, you get to understand that God allows things to happen to strengthen your faith and to show you his power. Because when it burnt down, we realized how powerless we were to the situation. Insurance that you had confidence in turns its back on you. The economy is not easy. And then you see God do his thing in your life in a very practical way, in a big way as well.
So you got to a place where you now understand God better, but initially, after the thing happened, it was a different story. So what happened for you to get to that place?
I think I understood better that whatever you have comes from God in the first place. And then whatever happens to it, it happens whilst he's watching. So when we'd get up to try and source materials and look for contractors and do, I now relinquished the power that I held on to initially. And I said, Lord, lead while I follow. And when you allow God to take his place and you take your rightful place, God is easy. It's easier for God to perform his miracle. There's one Sabbath school, I can't remember when, a friend of mine called Samson Lunga was giving me a lesson about a lifeguard. And his lesson was that lifeguards are there to save lives. But when they see you drowning, they initially wait until you've got no more strength. When the strength is totally gone, that's when they come, because now you're obedient to their instruction, because you don't have any of your own ideas. And so I think that was the lesson I learned in this tragedy.
Now, what is the condition of the building now? And maybe your final words after telling us the condition of the building.
We kept our promise to Mom that it would be better than it was. It's a beautiful shop. It's a modern shop. We've incorporated the bakeries back online. The butchery is back online, and it's a beautiful shop. A lot of people come and say, we have never seen such a shop in the high density. It's bigger than it was initially, and it's all a revelation of just how God can change a situation around. When it looks so hopeless and you feel like you've lost it all, God is able to make it better than it was before, as long as you let him lead.
So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Pastor.
And we've been blessed as you were talking about all these things. What would be one sentence that you can give to the viewers as we give our parting shot?
Whatever you own belongs to God. Give it to him and allow him to work his miracle in your life.
Thank you very much for sharing your story, and we've been blessed. Thank you very much for viewing. Stay tuned for the next program.